Who do you think is the easiest person to bully in a luxury hotel at 3 a.m.? Someone with no luggage, no reservation, wearing old clothes, looking lost and exhausted. That person was me. And that night, the night staff at my own hotel poured dirty water on me, burned the last photo of my late wife, stole my heart medication, and broke my ribs, all before realizing I was David Keat, founder and sole owner of the entire hotel chain they worked for. But this isn't just a revenge story. It's a confession from a man who built a system that allowed cruelty to flourish and then got swallowed by the very monster he created. Chapter 1. I was assaulted in my own hotel. And I don't know if people will believe me when I say this, but that night, I was assaulted, humiliated, and treated like trash right inside my own hotel. Yes, I'm the founder and owner of the Keat Hotels chain. But on that night, I was just a filthy, exhausted, worn out man walking into the lobby after spending a week inspecting our branches across 3 continents. The airline had lost my luggage, and I was wearing donated clothes. My hair was messy, my shirt wrinkled. I looked more like a homeless man than a billionaire CEO. And apparently for Lana, the night shift manager of our Chicago hotel, that was all she needed to decide who I was. I walked up to the front desk and said I needed a room. She looked up for barely 2 seconds, then looked back down at her phone, sighed, and said with an annoyed tone, "What can I do for you?" I repeated more softly this time, "I need a room." She laughed, not a polite chuckle, but a mocking laugh right in my face. Then she exchanged a look with Josiah, the night shift security guard. They looked at me like I was some filthy stain on the marble floor. "Should we call the cops now, or give him a chance to leave first?" Lana asked smugly. I stood there, stunned, tired, and confused. Before I could react, Josiah came around the counter and got in my face, close enough that I could smell a mix of coffee and cheap cologne. He took a deep breath and pretended to gag. "God," he said, "smells like piss and failure." Then, without warning, Josiah grabbed me by the collar and shoved me hard. I stumbled back, crashing into a bench pane, shooting up my spine from an old injury. Lana giggled like it was some sort of entertainment. "Careful," she said. "Don't want to catch something." I struggled to get up. My whole body ached. As I tried to grab onto the bench for balance, Josiah kicked it hard, sending it screeching across the empty lobby. They noticed the mark from my wedding ring, one I hadn't worn since my wife passed away last year. Lana squinted, then scoffed. "Let me guess. Your wife left you because you're a failure of a man." Josiah chimed in. "Probably beat her too." With those shaky hands, no surprise. I froze. That sentence hit like a knife to an open wound. My wife Anna died from a sudden stroke. She was my whole world. And now, they just stomped on the last piece of her memory I could still hold on to. I lowered my head, trying to breathe, when my wallet fell to the floor. My ID photos and documents scattered everywhere. Josiah stomped on my driver's license, while Lana snatched a photo of my wife, the one I always kept on me since she passed. "Oh, this one's hot. Way out of your league." Lana laughed, holding the photo up for Josiah to see. I stepped forward, pleading, "Please, that's my wife." Lana didn't even look at me. She ripped the photo in half. The sound of it tearing was more brutal than anything they'd said before. I lunged forward, trying to grab the 2 pieces, but Lana had already lit a lighter. She burned it right in front of me. Josiah pinned my head down, forcing me to watch the ashes flutter up into my face. "She's gone," Lana said coldly. "Just like your dignity." I tried to break free, gasping for breath, reaching into my coat pocket for my heart medication. Lana was quicker. She snatched the bottle, reading the label, oxycodone. "Yep, classic junkie," she said. I cried out, "I have a prescription. I need it." She walked outside, opened the cap, and dumped the pills down the drain, right in front of me. "Well, looks like you won't be selling these to kids anymore." I was left sitting there, knees scraped against the marble floor, in pain, ashamed, humiliated, and helpless. Then Lana pulled out her phone, dialed 911, and made up a story about a dangerous homeless man threatening their lives. Josiah tore up my boarding pass, my merger documents, everything I had on me. Trying to act important, he laughed. Then he picked up my VIP card and read the name David Keat. What the hell, this guy thinks he's the owner. They both burst out laughing. Josiah snapped the card in half. Lana leaned down close and whispered, "You are nothing, and you'll always be nothing." Then Josiah grabbed my hair and dragged me out of the hotel like an animal, while Lana followed with a bucket of dirty water and poured it all over me. "Maybe now you'll smell better," she sneered. Josiah kicked me hard in the ribs and threatened, "Come back, and you're going to the ER." Lana spat in my face. "Or the morgue." Then they both walked back inside, high-fiving each other behind the glass, like they just won a game. And me, I lay there covered in blood and filth and pain, and completely unable to understand what had just happened in the hotel that I own. Chapter 2. The truth came out. Too late. I had no idea how long I'd been lying there on the cold cement. My back throbbed with pain, the smell of cleaning chemicals soaked into my skin, and every breath made my ribs scream. At that moment, only one thought kept repeating in my mind. This is my hotel. This is the place I built with my own hands and my entire life. And then I heard the screech of brakes. Headlights beamed straight into my face. A familiar voice called out, "Mr. Keat." Oh my God, are you okay? It was Tom, the morning shift staff. He slammed the brakes, jumped out of his car without hesitation, and rushed to my side. His face was stricken with panic. He called my name, bending down to lift me up as gently as he could. Before I could even exhale in relief, Lana came running out from inside, still wearing her mask of fake authority. "Stay away from that guy, Tom, he just..." She froze mid-sentence when Tom looked up and said just 2 words. "No, Mr. Keat." In that moment, I saw Lana's entire expression change. It was like watching a mask fall off. From smug to terrified, then to full-blown panic. She took a step back, then another, as if she had just realized the man she had insulted, assaulted, and spat on was the name printed on her own paycheck. Josiah popped his head out the door too. When he saw Tom supporting me, he immediately dropped his phone. The look they both gave me, it was like they had just seen a ghost rise from the grave to take revenge. And maybe in their eyes I really was. I didn't say anything. I was in too much pain to speak. My teeth clenched as agony seared through my chest. Tom immediately called an ambulance, then took off his coat and laid it under my head to keep me warm. His hands were trembling. His eyes looked at me with a mix of fear and heartbreak. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Keat. I don't know what happened. You shouldn't be lying here like this." I gave him a small nod. Not out of forgiveness, just because I didn't have the strength to speak. Lana appeared again, this time with her phone pressed to her ear, pacing frantically in front of the hotel like a cornered animal. I heard her speaking urgently to someone, probably a lawyer, or someone she hoped could save her from the thunderstorm about to hit. Her free hand kept tugging at her hair. Her eyes darted around, scanning the ceiling corners. When I saw her gaze sweep across the lobby's ceiling, I knew she was trying to calculate how much evidence had been recorded. I wanted to laugh. If I weren't in this much pain, I probably would have. A hotel manager who doesn't know where the lobby cameras are, or maybe she never cared, because she never imagined she'd be caught. When the ambulance arrived, everything became a blur. The doors slammed open, EMTs shouting rapid questions, and Tom still held my hand shaking as he relayed the situation. He made it crystal clear I found him beaten, soaked in dirty water. "This is Mr. David Keat, the owner of this hotel." I recognized him immediately. I could feel the atmosphere inside the ambulance shift instantly after those words. The EMTs snapped into seriousness. One leaned down to check my blood pressure, immediately starting an IV when he saw how low it was. Another gently examined my ribs, and even a light touch made me scream in pain. Not because I was weak, but because they were actually broken. I didn't have the strength to explain, but Tom stayed right there, filling in every detail while I faded in and out of consciousness. The ambulance doors closed. The city blurred past the frosted windows in the pale morning light. Every movement hurt, but I didn't feel angry. I felt empty. Empty and alert, because only one thought remained in my mind: if they did this to me, how many others have they done it to people weaker than me? People with no power, no cameras, no one to even know they existed. I closed my eyes, and in the darkness, I made a vow. This time, no one would get away with it. Chapter 3, Cameras Don't Lie. When I woke up in the hospital room, the fluorescent lights glared off the stark white ceiling. The first thing I felt wasn't pain, it was emptiness. And right after that, the searing throb in my left side where 3 broken ribs screamed with every breath. The nurse checking my blood pressure flinched slightly when she saw my eyes open. She gave a gentle smile, but the quick glance she cast at my medical chart said everything. She knew who I was. Not because I'm famous, but because she'd seen my photo in the staff break room of one of the Keat hotels. She knew, and suddenly she treated me like a human being. Just because now I looked like someone of value. That feeling of only being treated decently after your identity is revealed didn't bring me comfort. It made my skin crawl. While the doctors x-rayed me, examined the bruises, and confirmed the injuries, I didn't talk much. I just asked, do I still have my phone? Thankfully, it still worked. I immediately called my lawyer. Even though it was during his lunch break, he picked up after 3 rings. I told him everything, every detail. I tried to keep my voice calm, but I knew it was shaking from anger and from pain. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he said, "The first thing we need to do is preserve the evidence. Security footage, documents, witnesses, everything." And that's when it hit me I had to see the footage for myself. When I returned to my office with my assistant a few hours later, I could barely stand. My ribs were wrapped tight, and I clutched the cup of water the nurse had handed me. I dragged myself into the office where everything was carrying on as if the previous night's horror had never happened. It was so quiet. It hurt. We submitted an urgent request to the hotel chain's IT department. It took almost an hour before the head of security arrived, carrying his personal laptop logged directly into the recording servers. No one spoke a word as he pulled up the footage from 2:47 a.m. And then I saw myself walking into the hotel, head down, ripped coat, looking every bit like a homeless man. I saw Lana glance up, that exact look in her eyes. I clearly heard the audio mic catch her scoffing Josiah calling me trash junkie. And then the show began. I couldn't look away from the screen. I saw myself being shoved, heard the snap of ribs like dry branches breaking. I watched Alana hold up the photo of my wife Anna's gentle smile flashing for a split second before she tore it in half. That's when I froze. Not because I was surprised I'd lived it, but watching it like an outsider felt like being tortured all over again. My chest ached. Not from the heart condition, but from the look in my eyes on that screen, the look of raw agony as they burned the last tangible piece of the woman I loved. I forced myself to keep watching, saw Lana dump my medication down the drain, heard every lie in that 911 call, watched Josiah shred my documents, stomp on my ID, and kick me out like an animal. Then came the bucket of filthy water, the kick to the ribs, the laughter echoing behind the glass. When the footage ended, I collapsed onto the desk, not because of the pain, but because I could no longer pretend this was just some isolated incident. Cameras don't lie, and they had captured everything, not just my humiliation, not just the assault, but how cruel people can become when they think you have no value. When I finally looked up, I told my assistant, make multiple copies. As many as possible. Send one to the lawyer immediately. Back one up to the secure server. She nodded and got to work right away. I stared at the screen one last time before it went dark. The face staring back at me wasn't that of a CEO, not a powerful hotel owner. It was the face of every person who's ever been looked down on for how they appear. And I knew I'm not the only one this has happened to, but this time I'm someone with a voice, with power, with proof. I can't remake the photo they burned, but I can burn down the system that let it happen. And I would start with Lana and Josiah. Chapter 4: The Price of Silence. I used to think what happened to me was just an accident, a moment of madness, something that spiraled out of control. But I was wrong. So wrong. Just a few days after the footage had been extracted and sent to my lawyer, HR sent me a document, a compilation of customer complaints from the past 3 years, specifically during night shifts at various Keat hotels. I remember opening that file with a chill in my chest. And I remember the moment I read the first line, how it hurt just as much as that kick to the ribs. 23 cases. 23. All of them had a strange similarity. A guest denied a room because they didn't meet the hotel's image standards. A woman with 2 kids asked to leave the lobby because there were no rooms available, even though the system showed 7 vacant rooms at that moment. An elderly man in a wheelchair rejected because his credit card was temporarily declined due to a bank error. A disabled young man told to leave the lobby area for aesthetic reasons. All of it happened on the night shift. All of it bore the signatures of either Lana or Josiah. And me, the one who approved monthly operational reports, the one who skimmed through these lines thinking, probably just a misunderstanding, not worth getting involved. I let it go. Not because I was cruel, but because I was busy. Busy keeping the brand image spotless. Busy negotiating 9-figure deals. Busy maintaining the illusion that the company was running smoothly. And that busyness became the excuse I used to stay silent. I stared at the report on the screen. The cold, emotionless lines listing events like they were mere statistics, not actual people. I remembered an email once from a front desk worker named Clara reporting that Josiah had kicked out a man wearing a soaked beanie who came in asking to shelter from the rain. The man just wanted to sit in the lobby for 15 minutes. Josiah called the police. Clara found it strange and filed an internal report. I had forwarded it to HR with a note that read, "Seems like a personal conflict. Handle this within the department." I had personally dismissed the first warning sign. I remember yawning as I forwarded that email, and now I couldn't breathe. Every time I thought about it, I called in Tom, the only one who stood by me that night. The man Lana had written up 6 times for being too friendly with vagrants. Tom stepped into the office, eyes cautious like someone who had once been pushed down, but was still willing to help others get up. I asked him to sit, and then for the first time, I apologized. Not the kind of apology that says, "I'm sorry you had to go through that," but a real apology for letting a good man like him almost lose his job simply for being kind. He didn't speak right away, just nodded. But in his eyes, I could see it clearly. He had once lost faith, and if I wanted to earn that back, I had to do something right. Not to save face, but to save the very values this hotel chain claimed to stand for. I opened my laptop, typed an urgent email to the entire board of directors. The subject line was simple: I need every report related to service denial across the entire system from the past 5 years. No exceptions, no cover-ups, no euphemisms. Then I sent a second email. Only 5 words. I've stayed silent long enough. Chapter 5. I was the one who created this toxic system. I used to believe I was a good leader, the kind of person who always put the customer experience first. The man who built the Keat Hotels chain as a symbol of luxury service with humanity. That was the slogan I came up with, printed in recruitment materials, hung on plaques in every meeting room. But the truth is, I lied. Not to everyone. To myself. Because I was the one who enabled that toxic culture. I built a system where maintaining standards became an excuse to exclude people. I wrote the policies that allowed staff to deny service if a guest didn't match the brand image. No questions asked, no deeper checks, just a gut feeling that someone wasn't worthy. And Lana Josiah, they were simply the most loyal products of that system. I rewarded them, praised them for upholding standards. Every time they submitted a report about turning away suspicious individuals, I never asked for details. The safety metrics looked good, incident rates were low, and I smiled. I don't smile anymore. I sat alone in my office, fingers lightly tapping the edge of the desk. Night had fallen. No more calls, no emails, no meetings, no voices. Just me and the dark, the only thing that had been honest this entire time. I thought of my wife. Anna always saw through people. She once told me, "You can't teach employees how to serve others by turning them into robots afraid of losing KPI points." I nodded. I laughed, and I forgot. And now I can't even step foot into any of my own hotels. I have mild PTSD. The sight of a front desk, a security uniform, it sends chills down my spine. I eat, sleep, and live in my office. A CEO with thousands of luxury rooms, who only dares sleep on a couch. I don't need a therapist to understand why. I'm haunted. Not by Lana. Not by Josiah. By myself. I created the ecosystem that allowed them to thrive. I ignored the emails, the reports, the red flags. I chose convenience over truth. And now the truth has come knocking not gently, but with a kick to my ribs. Literally, I can't undo what's been done. I can't heal the people who were turned away, the ones forced out of the lobby into the cold rain at night. But I can start at the exact place where I went wrong. The next morning, I sent out my first internal memo since the incident. Effective immediately, any decision to deny a guest must be approved by senior management with a specific written and recorded justification. All night shift activity will now be directly monitored. No exceptions, no gray areas. I wasn't just changing procedures, I was rebuilding the foundation. I called it the Tom policy because he was the only surviving example of human decency the system hadn't swallowed. And if there's still one Tom left, I believe the rest can still be saved. I no longer delude myself into thinking I was the victim. I'm the one responsible. And for the first time in years, that title doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like a beginning. Chapter 6. The Trial, Strong or Just. Cruel courtrooms aren't places for emotional outbursts. But that day, emotion couldn't help but break through. The air in the courtroom was thick, like everyone was holding their breath at the same time. Journalists packed the hallway. Hotel staff were split in two, the morning shift employees sitting behind me, while those who had worked nights with Lana and Josiah gathered on the opposite side. The media called me the billionaire beaten in his own hotel. They weren't wrong. But that was just the surface. Beneath it was the reason I sat here to make sure that this time, the truth wouldn't be buried under prejudice. Lana sat there, her hair neatly styled, hands trembling slightly. Josiah looked noticeably thinner, his security uniform hanging off him like it had been borrowed. They looked nothing like the two people who had once laughed gleefully while pouring filthy water over my head. But I hadn't forgotten, and neither had the cameras. The trial began with the video footage. No words were necessary. Each recorded image was so clear, no one in the room could look away from the screen. Lana's sneer as she glanced at me. Josiah shoving me. My groans of pain. The photo of my wife being torn in two. The lighter, the flames, ashes falling into my face as my head was pinned down. One juror turned their face away at that moment. Another clenched their fists, and I had to grip the edge of the table to keep myself from breaking down. When it reached the part where Josiah kicked me and Lana falsely called 911 claiming I was a violent junkie, one juror shook their head and whispered, "Unbelievable." And that wasn't even the knockout blow. Then Tom took the stand. Wearing a simple white shirt, his voice trembled at first, but each word landed like a sledgehammer on the fake polish Lana and Josiah had tried to paint over everything. He spoke of how Lana kept a list of 3-strike violations for employees she considered too soft with guests. He testified that he had been formally warned twice, once for offering to hold an umbrella for a guest during rain, and another for giving a homeless man a cup of coffee. His name had already been added to the ready-to-terminate list. The courtroom fell silent as he presented a printed screenshot of an internal email evidence that Lana had sent out a memo instructing supervisors to eliminate individuals who do not align with the brand's image. Lana's lawyer stood and objected, and that's when Lana lost control. She stood up, abruptly pointed at Tom and screamed, "People like you don't understand anything. We're maintaining standards. That's how we protect society from degenerates. Do you have any idea how many junkies and whores have tried to kick down this hotel's doors?" She screamed so loudly that the bailiffs had to hold her back. The entire courtroom went dead silent. And at that very moment, the prosecutor played a section of the security footage, this time with the audio enhanced, Josiah's voice as he kicked me to the ground. "Stay down where you belong." No explanation needed. No defense possible. The message was crystal clear. This wasn't about protecting the hotel. It was about calculated contempt for anyone they deemed beneath them. When my attorney asked if I wanted to make a victim statement, I rose slowly. I didn't talk about money. I didn't mention my position. I simply described the feeling of watching them burn the last photo I had of my wife and being forced to watch the ashes fall onto my face. I didn't demand harsh prison sentences. I said one thing: I don't want them locked up. I want them to relearn how to see people. The room fell quiet again. The prosecutor gave a small nod. So did the jury. After 6 hours of deliberation, they returned with the verdict. Lana and Josiah were found guilty of assault, defamation, and deliberate discrimination. The jury recommended the minimum custodial sentence paired with mandatory community service, believing that exposure to the very people they once looked down on may be a more fitting punishment than shackles. I walked out of that courtroom not feeling lighter, but I knew I had done the right thing. Not for vengeance, but so people like Lana and Josiah and the system that created them would no longer have the power to decide who is or isn't worthy of basic human dignity. Chapter 7. The True Price of Speaking Out. They say justice is light that drives out darkness, but no one ever warns you that light can blind you, that it can burn everything you once held dear. I won the trial, but I can't walk into my own hotel anymore. Not because anyone's stopping me, but because every time I step into a lobby, just seeing the front desk, the security uniform, or the soft yellow lighting, I start to sweat. My chest tightens. There were times I thought my heart had stopped, or the doctor called it cumulative trauma response. I call it the aftermath of truth. I live in my office, sleep on the couch, eat takeout. Board meetings are held over Zoom. People think I'm doing this for privacy. The truth is, I just can't stand the smell of floor cleaner. I can't walk down marble hallways. I no longer sleep well. The same dreams repeat over and over, Lana burning the photo of my wife Josiah kicking me down. But worse are the dreams without them. Just me. Sitting at my desk, typing an email, handle this internally. Then I hit send, and no one is ever saved. The price wasn't just physical pain, it was the collapse of faith in myself. I realized I had built an empire on standards, but I had never created a standard for humanity. The company began to fracture. Some employees felt I had gone too soft, that I should have locked Lana and Josiah up for life. Others, especially those who once worked the night shifts, said I stabbed staff in the back, set them up, punished the working class for one mistake. I listened to both sides. Neither was wrong, but neither was completely right. I used to think I could control everything. But the truth is, when you stand up for what's right, you're not just confronting the bad guys. You're also giving up the comfort of those who found peace in wrongdoing. My daughter came home from college, took a semester off to care for me. She sat quietly for hours in the office, flipping through documents when I didn't have the strength to type. She didn't say much, until one day she looked up and asked Dad, "Do you think people will understand? Or will they just see a rich man getting revenge on two ordinary workers?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was, if I, someone with power money lawyers, could be thrown to the ground, soaked in dirty water, falsely accused and spat on. Then how many others had it worse? And who stands up for them when there are no cameras? I didn't answer her. But the next day, I called HR and requested a full audit of all customer complaints marked as resolved prematurely over the past 5 years. I said, don't look for the big cases. Find the ones labeled not relevant. I want to read every line, because once you open the door to the truth, you don't get to look in just one direction. I also opened my personal inbox. In it was an email from 2 years ago from a trainee named Elijah. He had written, I know I'm just new here, but I saw an elderly man in a wheelchair being kicked out of the lobby because he didn't fit the brand image. I didn't know who else to tell, so I'm writing to you. I had never replied to that email. I had simply marked it as read, and that day, I stared at those words for over 30 minutes. Not because I felt guilty, but because I realized Lana and Josiah didn't appear out of nowhere. They were born from silence. From every red like that, I used to think standing up would make me stronger. But now I understand standing up for the truth will strip you of every comfort zone you've ever known. And only when you're willing to lose those can you truly change anything. Chapter 8: Restoring Dignity to the Forgotten. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's this kindness cannot just be a slogan. It has to be measured, enforced, and protected, just like quarterly profits or room occupancy rates. Otherwise, it gets trampled and forgotten, just like the people I once allowed the system to silently erase. After the trial, I didn't return as CEO. Not officially. I still own the company. I still attend every high-level meeting. But I no longer deserve the title of model leader. The company needed a new symbol, and I needed to repair what I had broken. The first thing I did was appoint Tom, the man who was once written up for being too kind, the man who bent down to help me when no one knew who I was, the man Lana called soft and bad for the brand. I promoted him to head of guest protection and advocacy, a brand new position I created from scratch. Not because I owed him something, but because the entire company owed him an example. Tom hesitated when I handed him the appointment. He asked, "Why me?" I simply replied, "Because you were the only one who remembered that a hotel is supposed to be a place for rest, not a place of judgment." A few weeks later, Tom began building his team. People who had once been victims turned away because they didn't look the part. They were retrained not to be receptionists, but to observe receptionists. Every night shift now included a secret checker from Tom's department, not to catch mistakes, but to ensure no one was ever dismissed just for not wearing dress shoes or designer clothes. I also implemented a new policy called the open hand policy. If a guest appears in need, staff are not permitted to turn them away. Instead, they must ask one required question. How can we help you today? Mandatory. No exceptions. We installed extra cameras in all the blind spots areas once used to quietly escort vulnerable people off the property. Now, those corners aren't shadows. They are tests of staff integrity under the light. But not everyone was thrilled with the changes. Some staff called it performative. Others accused me of being fake virtue signaling. A few shareholders worried the brand was becoming too soft. I didn't argue. I just handed them the report from 3 months in. Complaints dropped 47%. Guest return rate increased 22%. And to my surprise, revenue didn't fall. I remember letting out a small laugh as I read it. Turns out, treating people with dignity doesn't bankrupt a business. I visited one of our hotels at the end of that month. My heart still pounded as I stepped into the lobby. But this time, there was someone standing behind the front desk, young new, wearing a badge that read, Guest Protection Team. I asked half-jokingly, "If I walked in looking disheveled, what would you do?" The staff member smiled and pointed to the sign behind him. "Our policy is to extend a hand, not just open the door." I nodded. I didn't say anything more. Inside, I still hurt. I still hadn't completely stepped out of the shadows, but at least I knew I was doing the right thing. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like my wife would be proud of me. Chapter 9. I can't enter a hotel anymore. I can reform procedures, I can rewrite policies, I can fire the cruel, promote the kind, and implement everything that looks good on paper. But I still can't step into a hotel without trembling. My body reacts every time I see a front desk. I still take light sedatives just to walk through a lobby, even for a brief visit. And there are nights when I bolt upright from sleep, convinced I'm still lying on the cold marble floor, dirty water dripping onto my face. Lana's voice echoing in my head. You are nothing, and you will always be nothing. I visited my wife's grave one morning in March. She died of a sudden stroke. There was no time for goodbyes. But I've always believed that if we'd had one last conversation, she would have reminded me of kindness, of how no one is born lesser just because they lack a title or expensive clothes. I brought with me an old photo, the one Lana tore in half and burned in front of me. I had gathered the ashes, kept the torn pieces in my wallet, and once tried to tape them back together with clear adhesive. It never fully healed. The tear line is still there, just like me. I stood at her headstone, placed the photo down my hand, shaking. You had to see the worst of me, I whispered. But because of you, I learned the most important thing. That kindness can't be just part of a training manual. After that day, I officially resigned. Not from pressure, but because I believed real change couldn't come from the top if the one sitting there still carried an unhealed wound. I passed leadership to a new executive team, including Tom. I was no longer CEO, but I remained a watcher, a question asker, a quiet voice reminding them that every decision, even the smallest, affects someone on the other side of the front desk. And when other hotel chains began adopting our new model, requiring empathy training, adding nighttime oversight, reducing KPIs tied to profit, and increasing those based on feedback from vulnerable guests, I didn't feel proud. I felt relieved. I don't need to be remembered as the founder of Keat Hotels. I just want to be remembered as the one who finally said enough. In the service industry, where standards often mean coldness and guests are judged before they utter a word, I wanted to leave a small imprint. That dignity has no dress code. That kindness must never be delayed until after checking a guest's name tag. I still keep the photo in my wallet, the charred, taped together piece of paper, one that will never truly be whole again. But that's here. That tear is the reason I'll never forget the value of speaking out. And if even one person, just one, gets to sleep peacefully through a rainy night because of the policies we rewrote, then this scar is worth carrying. Not because I was beaten, but because I stopped being silent. It's no longer whole, just like me. But every time I look at it, I'm reminded some things destroyed can never be restored. But what comes next can still be repaired. I still can't walk into my own hotel without medication. But I know this no one else will ever be kicked out of the lobby again just for not looking the part. Because I let that system exist, and I dismantled it with my own hands. If you've ever been judged for how you look, or stayed silent when someone else was mistreated, then maybe this story is for you. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Whose side are you on? A wealthy CEO trying to reclaim his humanity, or employees trapped in a system they didn't create? And if you believe that dignity should never be defined by shoes, credit cards, or a price tag, hit like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because real change doesn't start with laws. It starts with those who stop staying silent.